Today we're going to go over what is the best mini classic. Obviously, one of the first ones that came out was the NES Classic Edition. And you might remember the Home Shopping Network and malls and all of them having them generic, like 200 games, which were like Contra, Mario Brothers. They weren't even like the real names. They were generic, like run and gun, shoot 'em up game, and etc. But we have the NES Classic. Great mini. I mean, even without a doubt, if you do not mod it, great system. You can do a lot of stuff on there, including Dreamcast. But you cannot run like Sega Saturn. Right down the line, we have the SNES Classic. It's essentially the same hardware, and whatever you can do on the NES Classic, you can also do in the SNES Classic. So they're pretty much tandem as far as what you can do on the mini classics, and there's not a damn thing you can do on one that you can't do on the other. They are pretty much virtually equal. And anything you cannot run on the NES Classic, you can simply use an SNES kernel, such as with DOSBox Pure, Ludicrous, N64 Stream, etc. Right down the line, the Genesis Mini Classic. This is the only out of the first three minis between the NES, SNES, and Mega Drive, aka Genesis Mini, that you could overclock. I mean, for some silly reason, they underclocked it to 1.008 gigahertz, and that is blasphemy in my opinion, because you need to be higher than that to run many of the things like Dreamcast, PSP, etc. So great system, and very stable as far as being able to overclock. If you try overclocking on the SNES or NES Classics, not all systems are quality assurance ensured to be able to bypass that. You might actually freeze your system and have it just crash, but you can simply uninstall the overclock otherwise, or use easy overclock. Right after the Genesis Mini Classic, oh look, there's that kitty again. She's getting real curious here. We have the PlayStation Classic Mini, and this is a bad boy here. This one can run Sega Saturn, current MAME 2022, etc. I mean, without a doubt, this would be my second favorite mini of them all out of the ones I'm talking about thus far. But yes, Sega Saturn runs on this. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff. I mean, I would say the only true reason to get the PlayStation Classic is if you must have current MAME and Sega Saturn. I mean, otherwise, every single thing that runs on a PlayStation Classic can run on the other minis. It's literally about Sega Saturn running fairly well on this, and current MAME if you want to run like Ike Katana, stuff like that. And it was actually removed from current MAME code because it's on next gen and all that, but that's besides the point. It's already there in the code base, so nothing we can do about that now. Right down the line, TurboGrafx 16. I think this one's a disappointment as far as modding capacity, because you have an issue where if you have too much power, you could actually have your front controller ports fry, and that is a bad thing indeed. We don't want that. So, I mean, I love the game lineup and all that, but I feel because of the whole COVID delays and all that, manufacturing issues and all that, that this is one of the worst minis to buy. Plus, it's about $300 US being scalped to hell on eBay. So I would not recommend buying this unless you're a hardcore TurboGrafx 16 fan. I mean, the hardware is not really realistically better than Mega Drive Mini or anything else, so this is going to be one that you may not want to ever mod. I mean, just keep it as a namesake, or keepsake, or a memento, or a nostalgic factor. But we'll get there someday, folks. And right after TurboGrafx 16, we'd have the Amiga 500 Mini, and this is absolutely the highest powered as far as performance and speed of all the minis, but it doesn't have OpenGL 3.0 support, so it cannot run Sega Saturn or current MAME, but it can run everything that the other minis have, and better than all of the other minis. Its biggest weak point here is the fact that it only has 512 megabytes of RAM, so yes, some games will run out of memory, such as Naomi 2, etc. But going down the line here, we'll do a little bit of a runner-up here. This one here is actually quite powerful. The PlayStation TV. Remember this, folks? That was a badass thing too. It runs like a lot of PSP games great, but these things are so pricey. I got this for $20 on sale on Amazon, and now they're selling for like $200-300, etc. One day I'm probably just gonna give this to somebody who really wants it, because I don't think I'm gonna really use it. I'm just so invested in running other stuff, include my original PSP, that this does not matter to me as much anymore. But now we have the Mega Drive Mini 2, And this is going to be a little bit disappointing to many of you, but it is essentially the same hardware as the Mega Drive Mini 1, with the exception of having more onboard NAND memory. So instead of having like the 512 megabyte of the original, it now has 8 gigabytes. And I would presume that to be roughly about 3 gigs left for syncing purposes of game libraries. So you may not even need to go to USB host or such once we do have this off the ground as far as actually is concerned. But in addition to that, instead of having 256 megabytes of RAM like the original Mega Drive Mini 1, it has 512 megabytes, which is equivalent to how much RAM is on board on the Amiga 500 Mini. And in contrast, with the 256 megabytes of RAM that is on the Mega Drive Mini 1, SNES Classic, NES Classics, and then the 512 megabytes of RAM that is on the Mega Drive Mini 2 and the Amiga 500 Mini, the PlayStation Classic has 1 gigabyte of RAM, which helps it exponentially run stuff like Killer Instinct Arcade without even having a hint of slowdown, including the arcade version. But let's check this out, except if you're doing outdoor stages. But I played a game about a month or two ago on an undisclosed classic. And this is going to be what I consider the absolute best out of all the classics to date, because guess what? Not only can it run everything that the other minis can run, but one setup you can run Dreamcast, 3DS, GameCube, Wii. I mean, it can run everything. And you know why? Because it is an Atari VCS. And it is just a fantastic system. These were on sale from GameStop because it did not do that well sales-wise, but for only $90 roughly. And this thing can run GameCube, PS2, Nintendo Wii, and all that. And don't get too excited right now. I would not go out and buy this right away because right now they're running between $200 and $300+. What makes this so special is that not only can you have it run like the other mini classics, but you could dual operate an operating system. Yes, you could put Windows on here, and with Windows, guess what you can run on here? You could run Cyberpunk on here, folks. Cyberpunk on your Atari VCS Classic. So out of all the classics, this is my favorite of them all. And in my previous video, I ran Gradius 2, Gradius 5 for PS2 on this thing. And here's my new favorite mini right here. This little girl right here. Look at this cute kitty. Look. Yes. Hey, look at that kitty go. Hey, the best mini of them all. Priceless.